Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Today we're exploring a topic that's super relevant for those of you in your 50s or maybe even your late 40s thinking about that next chapter.
Mm-hmm.
And we're really excited to share some of the insights we've gathered from years of talking to people who are a bit further down the road, those who are in their 60s, 70s, and even 80s.
Yeah, we've learned so much from these folks.
It's like getting a sneak peek into the future, right? A chance to learn from their experiences so we can avoid some of the common pitfalls and make the most of this next stage of life.
Absolutely. So much of the traditional financial advice out there focuses on the numbers, how much to save, when to retire. But what we found is that the real game changers are the mindset shifts and the proactive steps you take in your 50s.
It's about setting the foundation for a whole new chapter, right?
Exactly. It's like building a house. You wouldn't just start slapping on the roof without making sure you had a solid foundation in place.
And one of the most powerful frameworks that emerged from all these conversations was the idea of the 3 stages of life.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
But with a twist.
Yes, with a bonus 4th stage.
That's like hitting the jackpot.
It is. It really is.
So let's break it down for our listeners. Are you ready to dive in?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
All right, so imagine a triangle where each point represents time, money, and health.
It's a classic visual.
In your 20s and 30s, you're overflowing with time and health, but money might be the tightest constraint.
That's right. You're just starting out in your career. Maybe you're still paying off student loans.
You're hustling, you're building skills, you're probably living on ramen noodles.
Exactly. But you've got the energy and the time to make it happen.
Then, as you move into your 40s and 50s, that triangle starts to shift.
The dynamics change.
Your career is likely more stable, so money is less of a worry. You're probably still in decent health, but time, that's the one that starts to feel scarce.
It does. You've got work, demands family responsibilities, maybe even aging parents to care for.
Everyone wants a piece of your pie.
Exactly. And you're left wondering where your slice went.
Okay, so then we hit the 3rd stage, typically post-retirement.
Right. This is when you've hopefully built up a good financial cushion.
You've got more time to spare,
Then-
but now health might start to become a more prominent concern.
It's the natural progression of things.
But hold on, you mentioned a bonus stage, a 4th triangle,
Oh, yeah. This is the sweet spot.
the jackpot.
It's that period, let's say your 50s and early 60s, where you have a good balance of time, money, and health.
Right.
You're experienced enough to be killing it in your career, but you're also young and healthy enough to really enjoy the fruits of your labor.
All the planets align.
Exactly.
It's like that moment when you realize, hey, I've got this.
Right, you're financially secure, you've got the wisdom that comes with experience, and you're still physically capable of doing the things you love.
But here's the catch, right?
There's always a catch.
So many people we talked to admitted they missed out on maximizing this sweet spot. They put off travel hobbies, big life changes, thinking, oh, I'll have plenty of time for that later.
It's so easy to fall into that trap.
But the reality is that in your 70s or 80s, you might not have the same energy or physical ability to do those things as freely.
That's the truth. And it's one of the biggest regrets we heard from folks looking back on their lives.
So what's the takeaway here for our listeners? What can they do right now to make the most of this limited window?
Well, first, take stock of your current situation. Are you prioritizing experiences and activities that will become more difficult or even impossible later in life?
Things like that physically demanding trip you've always dreamed of.
Yeah, like hiking through the Alps or learning to scuba dive. Those are often the things people regret not doing when they had the chance.
It's like if you've always wanted to take a cooking class in Tuscany, maybe now's the time.
Right before life throws you a curveball or your knees start protesting a little too loudly.
Don't wait for someday.
Exactly. Because someday might look very different than you imagine.
And this brings us to another crucial piece of wisdom we gleaned from those who've been there. The importance of understanding the different types of time in your life.
Time is such a valuable resource, isn't it?
It really is. So break it down for us. What are these different types of time?
We all juggle 3 main types of time: career time, relationship time, and what we call recovery and renewal time. That last one is all about the activities that replenish your energy, reduce stress, and bring you joy. Hobbies, creative pursuits, spending time in nature, you name it.
So it's about taking care of your mental and emotional well-being, not just the to-do list.
Precisely. And what we found is that people in their 50s tend to overemphasize career time, sometimes at the expense of the other two.
They push themselves to the limit, thinking they'll rest and recharge later.
And that often leads to burnout.
Right? You can only run on fumes for so long.
Exactly. And the irony is that neglecting recovery and renewal time actually makes you less effective in all areas of your life. You're more irritable, less present with loved ones, and your work performance might even suffer.
So how do we avoid this trap? What did those seasoned veterans recommend?
One 55-year-old we interviewed, let's call
Right.
him Mike, had a fascinating way of describing this. He was a successful executive who had recently rediscovered his passion for rock climbing. He realized that his life was like a pie chart, with work taking up a huge slice.
So he wanted to dedicate a bigger portion to rock climbing, knowing it wouldn't be as easy in his 70s.
That's right. He wanted to adjust his identity pie chart based on what truly mattered to him and what might not be as feasible later on. It's about making conscious choices and accepting that you can't be everything to everyone.
That's a powerful image, that identity pie chart. It makes you think about what you're truly prioritizing and whether those choices align with your values and your long-term goals.
Exactly. So we'd encourage you, our listener, to reflect on this as well. What are the things that light you up, that give you energy and make time fly by? How can you start weaving more of those activities into your life now, even if it means tweaking your current routines or commitments? Remember, you can't pour from an empty cup.
It's a powerful reminder that self-care isn't selfish. It's an essential investment in your well-being and your ability to show up fully in all areas of your life.
Couldn't agree more. And that brings us to another crucial insight that came out of these conversations. And it might seem a bit counterintuitive at first, especially if you're someone who thrives on saying yes to new opportunities.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Lay it on me.
It's the power of learning to say no more often.
Really, we're often told to say yes to opportunities, especially earlier in our careers, to build momentum and all that.
Right, exactly. But as you transition into the second half of life, things shift a bit.
Interesting.
By your 50s, you've probably built up a lot of responsibilities. You're the go-to person at work, the rock for your family, maybe even a leader in your community.
You're the reliable one. Everyone depends on you.
Exactly. And that can be a good thing. It shows that you're capable and trustworthy, but it can also become a trap.
How so?
Well, you can end up spreading yourself too thin, leaving little time for those things that truly recharge you, that recovery and renewal time we talked about earlier.
So saying no becomes a way to protect your time and energy, to create space for what truly matters.
Precisely. It's not about being selfish, it's about being intentional.
Hmm.
It's about setting boundaries to ensure you're showing up fully in the areas of your life that you choose to prioritize.
It's like giving yourself permission to say no to the good so you can say yes to the great.
I love that. It's a subtle but powerful shift in mindset.
It is. It's funny how the advice we need at different stages of life can change so much.
Isn't it? It's all about adapting and evolving.
Early on, it's all about saying yes to build momentum, but later it becomes more about saying no to protect what you've built and create space for what truly nourishes you.
And that brings us to another interesting point that came up a lot in our conversations, and it's a bit of a challenge to the traditional notion that time is money.
Ooh, that's a big one.
Yeah.
I've always heard that saying, especially in the workaholic culture we live in. How does that idea play out in the context of retirement?
Well, in your 20s and 30s, the hustle makes sense. You're trading time for money to build your career and lay that financial foundation.
You're paying your dues.
Exactly. But as you get older, the equation flips. Time undeniably becomes more valuable than money.
Because you can always earn more money.
But you can't earn back lost time.
That's so true. And it's something we often forget in the midst of all the busyness.
And here's where it gets really relevant for those in their 50s. This is the decade that sets the tone for the second half of your life. The decisions you make and the actions you take during these years have a ripple effect that extends far beyond your 50s.
You're at a crossroads.
Exactly. It's like you're standing at a fork in the road, and the path you choose now will determine the landscape of the journey ahead.
Powerful imagery. So the question becomes, how can we make more time, or at least maximize the time we have, especially as we enter this pivotal decade?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is. So what did you uncover in your research? What are the secrets to time mastery?
Well, two strategies came up repeatedly, and they're surprisingly simple: investing in your health and buying back time.
Okay, let's break those down. What exactly do we mean by investing in health in this context?
It's not just about living longer. It's about extending the number of healthy, vibrant years you have to enjoy life on your own terms.
So it's about quality of life, not just quantity.
Exactly. And so many people we talked to regretted not prioritizing their physical and mental well-being earlier. They wished they had made healthier choices, exercised more, taking care of their mental health.
Because good health isn't just about avoiding illness. It's about having the energy and vitality to embrace all that life has to offer.
Precisely. We heard a remarkable story from a client. Let's call her Sarah. At 69, she's more active and energetic than many people in their 40s.
Wow, that's impressive. What's her secret?
She's been practicing yoga and meditation for years, and she makes fitness a non-negotiable part of her routine. She told us she feels like she's added 10 healthy years to her life.
That's inspiring. It shows that taking care of yourself is an investment that pays off for years to come.
And the beautiful thing is that it's never too late to start. Whether you're 50 or 70, there are always steps you can take to improve your health and well-being.
Small changes can make a big difference over time.
Absolutely. So what about this idea of buying back time? What does that look like in practice?
Yeah, I'm curious about that one too.
Think of it this way. You need an oil change for your car. You could spend hours researching how to do it yourself, gathering the supplies, getting dirty, and then cleaning up the mess.
Or you could pay a mechanic to do it in 20 minutes while you sip a latte and relax.
Exactly. You're essentially trading money for time, freeing yourself up to focus on things that are more enjoyable or meaningful to you.
You're outsourcing those tasks that drain your energy and steal your time.
Precisely. You're buying back time that you can then reinvest in activities that bring you joy, strengthen your relationships, or help you achieve your goals. And this applies to so many areas of life, from house cleaning and yard work to meal prep and errands.
It's about recognizing that your time is valuable and being willing to delegate or pay for help when it makes sense.
And this was a common thread among the successful individuals we interviewed. They had adopted this do what you do, best pay for the rest philosophy.
They were strategic about where they invested their time and energy.
Exactly. And it freed them up to focus on their strengths and their passions.
It's a mindset shift that can create so much space and freedom in your life.
Mm.
So for our listeners out there, where could they be buying back time? Could they hire a cleaning service, a dog walker, a virtual assistant? What would that allow them to do with those reclaimed hours?
Those are great questions to ponder. It's all about being intentional with your resources and recognizing that sometimes spending money can actually be an investment in your well-being and the quality of your life.
It's about creating a life that feels spacious and aligned with your values.
Absolutely. And speaking of values, one theme that came up repeatedly was the trap of getting caught up in the status game.
Ooh, the status game. What is that, and why is it a trap, especially for those in their 50s?
It's that all too human tendency to buy things to signal success or keep up with a certain social circle, luxury cars, designer clothes, expensive gadgets, that sort of thing.
It's that keeping up with the Joneses mentality that we all fall prey to at some point.
Exactly. And what these individuals realized, often with a tinge of regret, is that these material possessions rarely bring lasting happiness.
So the satisfaction is fleeting even if the price tag wasn't.
Exactly. We heard a story from a client who'd always dreamed of owning a Porsche. Once he hit retirement, he finally bought one, and for a few weeks he was over the moon. But then the novelty wore off. He even admitted that he wished he had just rented a Porsche for a month to experience the thrill without the long-term commitment and expense.
That's a great point. It highlights the importance of questioning our motivations before we make big purchases.
Yeah.
Are we buying something because it truly brings us joy, or because we're trying to impress others or fill some void within ourselves?
Those are important questions to ask yourself, because often the things that bring us the most lasting joy and fulfillment aren't things at all. They're experiences, connections, moments of beauty and meaning.
So how do we escape the status game trap, especially in a culture that so often equates success with material wealth?
The advice we heard time and again was surprisingly simple. Rent the experience before you buy the thing. Try it out. See if it truly enhances your life and brings you lasting joy. And if it doesn't, you'll have saved yourself a lot of money and maybe even a lot of clutter.
It's about being mindful and intentional with our spending, recognizing that true happiness comes from a much deeper place than our possessions.
Couldn't agree more. And speaking of deeper meaning, another important insight from these interviews was the importance of planning for a retirement that's filled with purpose, not just leisure.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's easy to imagine that retirement is all about, finally having all this free time to just relax and enjoy yourself. But what did you learn about the reality of retirement from the folks you interviewed?
Well, what we found is that many people initially pictured retirement as this, endless vacation, a time to finally slow down and just indulge in leisure activities.
That was pretty idyllic.
Right. But what they often discover is that after the first 6 months or so, this kind of lifestyle actually became quite boring and unsatisfying.
They got restless.
Yeah, exactly. They hadn't really defined any kind of purpose for themselves beyond their careers.
So they ended up feeling a bit lost and adrift.
That's it. It's like they had been so focused on what they were retiring from that they hadn't really thought about what they were retiring to.
So it's not enough to just stop working.
Yeah.
You need to have something to move towards something that gives you that sense of meaning and direction.
Precisely. And that's the key takeaway here. It's about being proactive, about exploring your interests, your passions, your values now, so that you can create a fulfilling and engaging life in retirement.
It's about designing that next chapter with intention.
Exactly, instead of just letting it happen to you.
So what did these folks recommend? How do you go about finding that sense of purpose?
Well, one suggestion that came up repeatedly was to think back to things you loved doing in your younger years, things you might have put aside because of, career demands or family responsibilities.
Things that got pushed to the back burner.
Exactly. And to ask yourself, could those activities be rekindled in retirement? Could they become a source of joy and fulfillment?
It's like reconnecting with those lost parts of yourself.
Yeah, we talked to this one woman who had been a competitive swimmer in college. She had put that passion on hold while she raised her family and built her career.
Life got in the way.
It happens. But in her late 50s, she started swimming again.
She got back in the pool.
And she rediscovered that joy and that camaraderie that she had missed for so long. Now, in her 70s, she's part of a master swim team and even competes in national events.
That's awesome. It shows you it's never too late to reconnect with those passions that make you feel alive.
Exactly. And it highlights how important it is to create space for those things now while you're still working. Even if it's just, carving out an hour a week to paint or write music or volunteer, those small steps can lay the foundation for a more fulfilling and purpose-driven retirement.
It's about nurturing those seeds of passion so they can blossom later on.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
And here's another piece of advice that might surprise you. Be prepared for potentially higher expenses in the early years of retirement.
Really? I always thought expenses would go down once you stop working.
I know, right? It's a
Yeah.
common misconception. We're often told that we'll spend less in retirement. But the reality is that those early years can actually be a time of increased spending.
Why is that?
Well, especially if you're healthy and active, you might find yourself traveling more, pursuing new hobbies, or finally tackling those home renovation projects you've been putting off.
So you've got more time and energy to do the things you've always wanted to do.
Exactly. But those things often come with a price tag.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So how do you plan for that financially? How do you avoid getting caught off guard?
The key is to start tracking your expenses now while you're still working. Get a clear picture of your spending habits, and then think about how those might translate to retirement. Are you a homebody or an adventure seeker? Do you prefer fine dining or cozy nights in?
So your current lifestyle provides clues about your potential retirement spending.
Exactly. It's like taking a test drive of your retirement lifestyle to see what it might actually cost.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
So are there any tools or resources you'd recommend for tracking expenses?
Oh, absolutely. There are some fantastic apps out there like Monarch Money that can automatically track your spending and categorize it so you can easily see where your money is going.
That takes the guesswork out of budgeting.
Exactly. It gives you that data you need to make more informed financial decisions.
So we've talked about the importance of finding purpose, the potential for higher expenses in early retirement. What other wisdom did these wise folks impart?
The advice that really stood out, the one that resonated with just about everyone we talked to, was the importance of nurturing relationships.
Yeah, that's a big one. As we get older, our connections with friends and family become even more precious.
Absolutely. We heard so many stories from people who wish they had invested more time and energy in those relationships when they were younger, during their busy 50s when work and family demands were at their peak.
Because it's easy to let those relationships drift.
It is. We get caught up in the busyness of life. We talked to one man who shared how he had kind of drifted apart from his closest friends as he climbed the corporate ladder. But once he retired, he realized how much he missed those deep connections. And, it took a lot of effort to rebuild those bridges.
That's a powerful reminder that, true success in life isn't just about achievements or material wealth. It's about the quality of our relationships and the connections that bring us joy and support.
I couldn't agree more. So here's the advice we'd offer to those of you in your 50s. Be proactive about nurturing those relationships. Make time for the people who matter most. Reconnect with old friends. Strengthen your bonds with family, and be open to meeting new people through clubs, groups, or activities you enjoy. Those connections will be invaluable as you navigate the transitions of later life.
It's a reminder that we're not meant to go through life alone.
Yeah.
We need those strong connections to support us, challenge us, and make the journey richer.
Well said.
Wow, this has been such an insightful deep dive.
Yeah.
We've covered so much ground from maximizing that sweet spot in our 50s to the power of saying no, the value of investing in our health and buying back time, and the traps of getting caught up in the status game.
It's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you.
And of course, we can't forget the importance of nurturing those all-important relationships.
And to our listeners, remember that your 50s are a time of incredible opportunity and potential. It's a time to really reflect on what truly matters to you and to make choices that align with your values and your vision for the future. Take those insights from those who've gone before you and use them to craft a life that feels authentic, fulfilling, and deeply meaningful. And remember, the second half of life can be the most rewarding chapter yet. It's all about making conscious choices and embracing the possibilities with a sense of purpose and joy